Hey, how y'all doing out there? The name of the show today is Free Your Mind. So today we're just gonna cover like some random news in politics. I don't want to stress myself out with a specific topic, And as always, you can join this show if you like and chop it up, or you can leave comments. But if you want to join the show, click the link above. Let's go. Don't take my word for it. Look that mess up, please.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? KCE, King
An
Chaka.
educated and united public cannot be controlled. Get organized. Learn to be active.
Looks like we got us another hit.
You tell her to get away from me. She's crazy.
Choose your destiny.
An educated and united public cannot be controlled. Get organized. Learn to be active. Investigate both sides of the argument. Come up with your own conclusions.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? KCE, King Chaka.
Hey, how y'all doing out there? How y'all feel? Remember, an educated public cannot be controlled. Learn to be active. The views and events expressed here are totally whack and are not necessarily the views of anyone, and it may or may not be factually correct. Therefore, this has been produced for educational and or entertainment purposes. Podemos ayudarnos más si se puede. Don't take my word for it. Look that mess up for your own benefit. Look this stuff up. The name of the show today is Free Your Mind. I was thinking about courage. You know, the courageous person, being courageous is not an absence of fear, it's acting in spite of that fear. Okay. So, like, to free your mind is a courageous act. And being in your algorithm, your feedback loops, is a safe place, you know, mentally. So, to escape it, it takes a certain amount of courage. It takes overcoming that fear, the fear of being wrong, the fear of being ridiculed, the the fear of being like exiled. Um, I'm I, I'm wrong all the time, you know, and I'm okay with that. It's a learning experience. Every day I learn more stuff. Okay, and that's what gives me the courage to be up here. mispronounce words. I stumble over things that I'm reading and say names incorrectly. you know, and there's no limit to the amount of people who's gonna see my inact, you know, inaccuracies, if you will, my mistakes. But I'm okay with that because I feel compelled to do this. People are struggling in their life. They don't have time to dig through all of the policies and politics and news and try to make sense of it all. That's part of the system. They got us on, the treadmill. They got us on the hamster wheel and grinding in and out every day. And that's where they want us to be. So, but you can come to shows like this one and get a little bit more informed or whatever. Maybe break your algorithm. What I'm trying to do above all is to adjust your algorithm. Okay, get your algorithm to feed you some different stuff. you know that's my main goal. So the randomness of the show is to, like, today, I don't want to choose a specific topic, therefore it's going to stress me out and have to try to cover that. It causes problems. I want to be free today and just kind of like go over whatever pops up and see which direction it goes in. I want to separate myself from the other shows. The people that do, they stay to the topics. I want to differentiate myself from others and be able to make my own brand, if you will. And I've been playing with these ideas and how to actually do that for over 2 years now. And I'm thinking that the randomness of the show is the strength of the show, if you will. So that's where we are. Like it, love it, leave it, F it. Let's see. What's good
What up,
with you?
bro?
What's good with
I'm
you, bro?
alive. I'm alive.
It's good to be alive, man.
It is. It's a blessing to be alive, my friend.
Yep. It's many that's not.
Oh no, you alive. I don't speak to dead people. Nothing against my pops, but I didn't speak to him the first opportunity I got. I love my dad. I miss my pops,
Yeah,
but
me too.
I can't speak to him.
Um, it's good to be here and now. That's one of the things I struggle with is my mind is always either in the past or it's in the future, and I really struggle with being in the now. And so I just try to tell myself to, like, enjoy the moment, be in the now, take it all in, because
Yeah,
before you know it, that moment is past, and then you're looking back on it again.
yeah.
So, for me, try to live it up as much as I can. Whatever I'm compelled to do, try to do that thing so I can have fewer regrets. You know what I mean? I don't want more
Yeah.
regrets. Let's have fewer regrets.
I hear you, bro. I hear you. The
Anyway, how you
the
been,
best
bro?
of it.
How's life?
I'm I'm alive, bro. I'm alive. I'm gonna start off saying that again. Dude, I've been running through jobs. This is the most jobs I've had in a year in my entire life. Like just transition through jobs. So you right on the whole know who you are based off of what the whole gift, bro. Your gift is your mind. That's everybody. Be who you are, man. I don't hate anybody because of their darn colors. We ain't supposed to be killing ourselves here. So you right on this subject. You were 100% right. That's why I was surprised, and that's why I joined the darn show.
I'm losing my internet. Okay, I'm back. Can y'all hear me? Make sure. Okay, okay. Yeah, internet flipped a little bit there, but I'm here.
Are you all good?
Yeah, man. What do you say?
I said no. Yeah, I heard what you said. You all good?
Okay, okay. let me get into some of this. Gavin Newsom, governor of California, he's cleaning up um the state and all of the homeless people. Let me play this clip here.
Governor Newsom says he is fed up. There are no more excuses. He says the state has done its part, providing plenty of funding to get encampments cleared up. He wants to see the results now. Governor Newsom made the announcement here in Los Angeles yesterday. He joined Caltrans to clear several encampment sites. Newsom touting the work that's been done under his leadership, spending roughly $24 billion on the problem, including at least $3.2 billion in grants given to local governments to build shelters and connect homeless people to services. Newsom says if those funds aren't used by cities and governments, he will start redirecting money beginning in January.
There's no more excuses. You got the money, you got the flexibility, you got the green light, you got the support from the state, and the public is demanding it of you.
While Newsom is pressuring local governments to do the same, he cannot legally force them, but he does have the power of this executive order. Use the money or lose it. That state funding would then be redirected to cities and counties are getting the work done. Governor Newsom said
to be out there himself, picking up the trash out there. I know that people are tired of all of the eyesores and so forth and so on. California is like a haven for homeless people. Like the weather, I think, is what drives a lot of people to that state, is because it's nice weather most of the time. So if you don't have any shelter, you could kind of be out there and still kind of be okay. And then they have a lot of government programs out there. So,
Oh, bro, I'm gonna try to cut my volume up.
You got all right.
Give me one
He's
second. I'm
saying
sorry.
that you guys, the municipalities use the money that's available to give assistance to these homeless people, or are you going to lose that funding? He's like, clean up those areas, get them people off the street, get them somewhere. And the move, I would say. ABC, it says Governor Gavin Newsom has a message to local governments: clear homeless encampments now, or lose out on state funding next year. I want to see results. I don't want to read about them. I don't want to see the data. I want to see feedback. Comments. It says, what's his excuse for not doing it sooner? Another comment says, all of a sudden sounds like bait to get votes in the future. I kind of get those arguments or whatever, but at the same time, I mean, like, when someone is actually doing something, it's better to commend them for doing it than saying, why haven't you done it sooner, or all of a sudden, or whatever. Like, you want them to take care of business, but then you complain when they actually take care of business. Like, what do you want? There's no pleasing you people. He doesn't do anything, then you complain about him for doing that. And then when he does something, you say he did it all of a sudden, or too late, or so long.
I know. The funny part of what you just said is a lot of people are like that.
Yeah.
It's another reason I don't play racism. A lot of people are like that, bro. As a whole, we all have to work for us. Like, we really do.
Yeah.
On home.
That's what we should be doing. But all of these people, they have their keyboards and they don't have anything else, and they, I guess they feel like they got a voice, and they just, want to get on their keyboards and add their little 2 cents to the situation. Let me read some more comments. It says, look at him acting for elections. He's all grown up. Another one, always before the election. Another one, clean the mess you made. Another one, we want to see where all the money went to fight homelessness went. Well, that's what he's saying. He's telling them to use that money, stop messing over the money or whatever. Use it to get these people in the house.
Yeah.
Let's move on. I'll probably come back to it.
Okay.
Let's see.
We're talking about potentially thousands of Ukrainian soldiers, maybe 6,000 even, involved in this operation, which does seem to have been carefully planned to cause maximum surprise, maximum humiliation for Vladimir Putin.
And should Ukraine continue to hold territory inside Russia, well, that could change any future negotiations quite significantly.
This all began on Tuesday morning, and at dawn on Tuesday morning. It looked like a straight incursion on behalf of one of the militias, the anti-Russian militias. But by today, it's pretty clear that the Ukrainian army is backing it up. They seem to be backing it up with at least 3 top-line brigades, and with what I call the enablers of the heavy metal. Some of the engineering facilities, some of the anti-mining equipment, some of the ground-based air defense, and heavy mortars. So clearly, the Ukrainians are serious about this. They intend to take a piece of Russian territory and stay, at least for a while. Interestingly, the Ukrainians have actually now talked about it. Usually when these things have happened in the past, Kiev has kept quiet about it. But this time they're talking about it in the sense that they are quite happy for us to understand that this is part of a strategy that Kiev either backs or maybe has created. So interestingly, this time, we now know something about it from Kiev itself, as well as from what the Russians are saying. The importance of this depends on how long the Ukrainians think that they can hold that piece of territory. If they hold it for a while, then it becomes a bargaining chip, and it may well draw Russian forces away from the Donbass, which is where the Ukrainians are under pressure themselves. But if the Russians are able to snuff this out quite quickly, then the Ukrainians are taking quite a big risk, because they're putting some big units into this operation, and they're betting their troops and their equipment that they won't lose too many of them before it is over. So it's an inventive strategy, but it's really quite risky.
I can hardly hear you.
To make a comment. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of feedback from out of your mic or something. It's like beeping and noises in the background. So just jump in when you make comments, okay?
Hey, just let me stick right here. It'll be clear in just a moment.
Okay. Okay. War on Ukraine. It says, what does Ukraine's incursion into Russia mean? It says, as Ukrainian troops advance into Russia, Michael Clark explains what it means. So yeah, apparently Ukraine made a incursion into Russia, and what they're saying is they're holding some Russian territory, which is a really interesting development, given that Ukraine has been not had very many wins in this war. So this one looks like a win, which is really interesting to me. You know, we'll see what happens over time, but you know, I guess that money from the United States is getting well spent in this situation right here. Let's read some comments. It says, why a lot of dudes that don't give a F try to comment on war with Russia like they know something about it? Question mark. Another comment, it means they attacked part of Russia. Okay. Another comment, it says, to send them more aid and to escalate a wrong proxy war for their own benefits. Another comment, it says, Moscow will retaliate. Do we have a translation for this? It says, all citizens of the Russian Federation bear collective responsibility for this war. Comment, it says, I thought it was defense purposes only. That's an interesting comment too, because that's what Ukraine have been saying for the longest, and that's what the overall media is saying, that it's a Russian aggression war or whatever. So if that's the case, then Ukraine taking Russian territory kind of goes against that particular narrative. But then too, on the other hand, you could think about the best defense is a good offense, right? So maybe if you do some aggression into Russia, that will allow you to have some bargaining chips to save your own territories. Who knows? Comments, it says, if you believe this story. I ain't gonna lie, when I first saw this story, I was like, is this really real? Because like it just doesn't sound real to me. Like what do I know? Again, what do I know? It just doesn't sound real. But what do I know? I can only go by what they're saying. Comment, it says, a few weeks from now, Ukraine will be no man's land. Another comment says, more sly propaganda. I have been seeing this story in more than one place, and this is on Sky News, which is pretty reputable overall. I mean, all of them have biases, but Sky News tries to not give like misinformation. It'll give slanted information, but it don't just like make up stories. So I'm gonna go with it as a real thing that happened. It says Westerners happy now because Ukraine's going to be destroyed soon by Russia. You know, and I just don't see Ukraine winning the war against Russia at all, and it's prolonging the inevitable, I would say. And the media, the Western media, loves to like any stories that's showing Ukraine is, you know, winning or whatever, that looks like Ukraine is winning. That's what they're going to jump on. They're going to play them over and over again to kind of give a certain perception. Let's do this one. So, yeah, let's do this right quick.
Many people dismiss Trump supporters as ignorant. Bunk.
Yeah, so I like this little clip right here. You know, we have to find a way to move forward together. And if we're pointing fingers at each other saying the other side is dumb or stupid or whatever, you know, that's not going to get you anywhere. It's not going to get the conversation going or whatever. And we have to figure out what is the reasons that lead people to feel the way that they feel, not saying that they're just stupid or whatever. And that's the reason why they're doing what they're doing, you know. And on this show, you know, we talk all the time from both sides, you know, not trying to say that people who support Trump are just, they're all ignorant and they're all racist or whatever. And the same thing from the other side, not saying that the liberals are all like communists or whatever.
If we want to reduce the lure of authoritarianism, we need to address its root causes. The truth is, many of the key political and economic institutions of our society have abandoned American workers. The free market has been rigged, and power has shifted upward to corporate executives and investors who engage in organized bribery, bankrolling lawmakers who change laws and regulations to their benefit. This allows the powerful to monopolize, bash unions, pay lower taxes, make big financial bets on Wall Street, and get bailed out when they go sour, outsource jobs abroad, and pretend they're job creators who deserve all this power. By 2016, the richest 0.1% owned nearly as much wealth as the bottom 90% put together. For many people, the American dream has become a nightmare. Most Americans without college degrees are working longer hours than they worked decades ago and taking fewer sick days or vacations. Meanwhile, life expectancy has been falling since 2010 for Americans without college degrees. That's because income and wealth have direct impacts on health and longevity. They determine access to life-supporting services like high-quality preventive health care, nutritious foods, and housing. And income and wealth have a lot to do with whether someone is endangered by handguns, opioids, and economic stress. As a result of all of this, Americans have become angrier and more frustrated, more vulnerable to demagogues peddling the politics of hate. Gross inequality is the enemy of democracy. But this doesn't have to be our fate. We have the power to make a system that works for the many, not the few.
Do we have the courage to do so, though? You know, the crowd, the Make America Great crowd, is not a monolith, you know, but what they do have in common is that they are angry, and for good reason. We all should be upset. You know, it's like people react in different ways. So you have the way that the Make America Great crowd reacts, and then you have the way that the others that don't align with the Make America Great Again crowd aligns, you know, reacts. I mean, but it's out of anger, it's out of frustration. It's like, what can you do? You know, you definitely feel like you're getting screwed. You look around, you're like, I'm definitely getting screwed. What do I do about it? It's like my vote seems to not be working. What do I do about it? What is the answer? You know, organizing, taking care of your community, locally voting for local elections, you know, whatever you are compelled to do is what you should do, right? So pointing fingers at one side or the other is not helping. That doesn't move us forward. Like, that is not the answer. Absolutely. So, you know, calling the Make America Great Again crowd, you know, ignorant or whatever, is not the way to go, basically. And trying to discern the reasons that they have to be in that crowd is where we should be. Let me read the caption. It says, I can't understand why it's tempting. He says, I can understand why it's tempting, but labeling Trump voters as ignorant or stupid isn't helpful. Here's what you need to remember. Comments. It says, as a person with a public health background and a nurse, this might be the most thorough, concise explanation of why our country has become both more stressed and frustrated. Very well done. Another comment that says, I get why they're disenfranchised and angry, but what you explain still doesn't account for why they choose to align with the very ones who are directly responsible for their hardships. This is what's stupid in my book. It's literally I'm angry, so I'm going to side with my abusers because they're talking the trash, pandering to every phobia and ism out there, sprinkled with Christianity that I want to talk situation and make it make sense. Well, when you're frustrated, sometimes you make decisions that aren't in your best interest. And when you're struggling, that's when you're ripe for being taken advantage of. When you're in that position of anguish, of struggle, of stress, that's when you're ripe for someone to come and just like screw over you like that. It's most likely for you to get screwed over when you're in that position of submission, when you're in that position of hopelessness. You know, if you come into a situation with the ideas that, you know, I'm going to be good, I'm going to be fine, things are going to work out, let me take my time and make the best decisions to move forward, it's more difficult for someone to, you know, rip you off basically. It's like, if you really really need a car, like you have to get to work, you got to get the kids to school, for some reason your car is done, it's totaled, it doesn't work, and you're strapped for cash. So you are likely to get screwed over by someone who's trying to sell you a car. That makes any sense. So, I mean, I'm trying to make an analogy out of the American people and why they choose to, you know, fall into the Make America Great Again crowd and comparing it to buying a car. Let's read some more comments. It says, the wealth gap is the issue, Why should a CEO make 500 times what the worker who helped him become so wealthy make? This isn't fair. It's slavery. And things are going to continue in this direction. You know, the the media is a big part of it. And the narrative, the brainwashing, the programming that happens that tells you that uh, private sector is the best way to go. You know that these corporations need they create jobs, so we need to give them incentives and monies to support them, stuff like that. You know, people are overall lazy and they don't really want to work. And a lot of this stuff is just really not true. Like, people want to work, people want to provide for their family. They want to be respectful, they want to be upstanding citizens. Most people, but when you look at it the other way, people are born in sin, people are, wretched, you know. So when you have that attitude, that's what leads to the situation that we have, where you feel like you have to like force people to do things, like you have to like whip them into submission. Let's read a couple more comments. It says, Robert, please keep doing these. America needs to learn from you. Love you, bro. Another one. I love this man and his knowledge and commitment to sharing the truth. And this post carries more weight because this guy is really coming from the left, saying that Trump supporters are not ignorant. Comments, it says, can we run this on television every day, please? Preferably during Fox News programming. Another one, it says, absolutely, from my experience, IRL. Many quiet yet strong supporters are upper middle class educated people who say things like they support his economic and social policies. Read enriching myself and marginalizing other cultures so my kids have less competition. These people are not at the rallies, but they're smart and dedicated. Ooh. Another comment, spot on. Thank you, Mr. Reach, for always spelling it out in a way that everyone can understand. Another one, they're being lied to. Repeat a lie enough times and say it like it's the truth. You can get people to believe you. Yeah, I think a lot of us are getting misled on both sides, and it's really unfortunate. Let me see. It says, so if you, here's another comment. It says, so if you support Trump, who supported this kind of behavior, isn't that ignorance? Again, there's a lot of confusion. Another comment says, but Trump voters are also the people that truly believe that trickle-down economics is real. I think there's people on both sides who believe that trickle-down, it was mashed into people's brains since the 80s. So yeah, they believe it. These people aren't looking at the data, they're not looking at these charts that's showing, you know, the wealth inequality and where the money is actually going. The most of people just look at their own situation and they judge everything based on that. If I'm doing good, then the president is doing good. If I'm doing bad, then the president is doing bad. Really, really simple for them. Let's move on. It says 10 years after Ferguson, documented police killings continue to grow. It says in the 10 years since Michael Brown's Jr. killing by Ferguson, Missouri officers sparked protests around police brutality, documented police killings in the United States have continued in virtually the same rate. An NBC News analysis of the mapping police violence database found. An NBC News analysis found police killed between 1,000 and 1,300 people each year between 2013 and 2023. Documented police killings have risen each year from 2019 to 2023. And if 2024's current pace holds, it will continue the trend. Black people, Native Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders have been killed at higher rates each year than the general population and higher rates than whites. Yeah, I think that focusing on who the police are killing is the wrong thing to focus on. The focus should be that the police are killing people, period. And something needs to change that leads to less people dying at the hands of the police, regardless of their, you know, background or ethnicity, skin tone. Comments. It says, according to this chart, police shootings increased under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. I thought they were going to put a stop to it. You know, I mean, that's a fair thing to say right there because the data, you know, supports this right here, you know, but it also shows how little power the who is the president has over our lives in general, because whether it was a Republican or a Democrat in office, as you can see, this trend has been continually going up. And you've had changeover multiple times. So who's the president obviously doesn't have an impact on this particular trend. Comment, it says, stop breaking the law and resisting arrest. Is that simple? So, you know, people that make these comments, so all of those people who, you know, were killed by the police, they were all like breaking the law and resisting arrest. And so that justifies the police killing these people. So the police can act as judge, jury, and executioner, and that's totally fine with you. Breaking the law is a, you know, valid reason to kill someone, is what you're saying. Another comment says, because crime is growing. So there's a correlation between how much crime we have and how many cops, how many people are killed by police. Why would that be a correlation? And if it is, you're okay with that? You're okay with it, you know, more people dying at the hands of the police because crime is growing. And the data says that it's not. Violent crime has been dropping. So at the same time as violent crime is dropping, police killings are growing. So your comment doesn't have any merit in any way, shape, or form. Another comment that says, what did they do to get shot? Another comment says, cops aren't the problem. Weak laws and the massive growth of inner city gangs is to blame. Liberal cities lead the nation in gun violence. 70-85% of violent crimes involve inner city gangs. 90% of gangs in the United States are minority based. Blaming the cops will never fix our violent crime issues. Gun laws do nothing. Politicians are afraid to admit that the vast majority of violent crime is committed by Black and Hispanic gangs. Every police shooting starts with the person failing to listen. Black males between the ages of 18 to 45 commit violent crime 22 times more than any other group. If we had a zero tolerance with gangs, 70 to 80% of violent crime in the United States would be gone. Blaming white people, cops, and guns is the way the liberal brain operates. The most dangerous people in the country are Black and Hispanic males between 18 and 45, and they inflict crime at one of the highest rates on the planet. So, like, this person is saying, you know, blaming white people, cops, and guns is the way of the liberal brain. But then right after that, he says the most dangerous people in the country are Black and Hispanic. So you are flipping the idea of the race thing and like justifying it on one end and then on the other end saying it doesn't have merit. So I feel like you should pick your battles, you know, stay consistent. If it's not a racial thing, then leave out the racial part of it. Another comment, it says, the perception of this article is that police just go out to kill people. As I recall, the facts prove Michael Brown did not have his hands up and was approaching a law enforcement officer in an aggressive manner when he was told to stop. In order, Michael Brown disregarded. Law enforcement officers do need the best training available and do need alternatives besides guns, and no one should end up losing their life when a law enforcement officer has to arrest an individual. However, people need to obey the law, obey the commands of the police officers, and should not resist arrest. Common sense says be calm in a stressful situation or something very bad could happen. The law enforcement officers should be able to defend themselves. They should be able to defend themselves in a lethal manner when there is not any lethal threat to them. Comment, it says the police didn't kill George Floyd. He died of a drug overdose. Another one, stop resisting arrest. Another one, how many of the victims are unarmed and white? Another comment says, would be helpful to see the rate of violent crimes against this chart and are there correlations? That would be useful. I completely agree with that. Another comment, science would suggest you would match this up with the violent crime rates. Well, the violent crime has stopped. And see, the issue with people like this is that they're not going to take the time to look it up. And if they do see the chart, they're going to say that it's wrong. Case in point, let's look it up right now. Let's see if we can do it. This chart is from 2019 to 2023. Let's see. I want a chart. Okay, we got some images. This one is going way back. Anyways, let me share what I got here. United States violent crime rate per 1,000 people. This chart is from 1960 to 2019. So it's terrible that it jumps from 2010 to 2020. It doesn't reflect our chart very good with the other one. But you can see from 2010 to 2020, there's a decrease in this chart here. Can we find something better? This one is just murders only. Stops at 2020. Violent crime offenses 2015 to 2019. So there was a jump from 2015 to 2016, and then it continues to dip. We don't know what it does after 2019. Violent crime. So this one is 2007 to 2011. Do we have one that's better? This one is murders in Chicago. Property card. Hold on. Let's see. Can we get something better? Violent crimes per 100,000 people in the U.S. I wish we could get a chart that was more comparable to the one that we have. Violent crime, murder, and non-negligent manslaughter. Stops at 2014. This is part of the problem because there's so many parameters. You have to isolate the parameters to be able to compare and get decent data. 2022, a change from 2021, 2019. Hold on, y'all. Homicides in Los Angeles. There's got to be some better. Let's see. By category. Let's see if we can get a news article. How about that? Might be better. Crime Trends, U.S. Cities, year-end 2023 update. Council, oncj.org. I want violent crimes because when they bundle all crimes in, then that can be misleading. PBS.org, U.S. states, hold on. Let's look at this article right here. PBS.org. It says FBI data shows that violent crime in the U.S. decreased in 2023. So I wonder, they're going to talk about, let's look at it right quick. It says, what is this? March 20th, 2024. Doesn't have an author. Washington AP, new FBI statistics show overall violent crime in the U.S. dropped again last year, continuing a downward trend after a pandemic era spike. Okay, so that little highlight right there kind of sums the whole thing up. You know, after COVID, we had a spike in violent crime, and then it has continued a downward trend, which it was on a downward trend before COVID. So you had an overall downward trend since the 90s. The last time I looked at these things, a little spike after COVID, and then it returned to its downward trend. It says murders dropped 13% in the last 3 months over 2023 compared with the same period the year before, according to FBI data released this week. Violent crime overall was down 6%. And then what people will say is like, oh, Chicago, or they'll say Compton or New Orleans or something like that. And it's like, understand that it's there's a lot of states, there's a lot of cities in the country. And if you based crime, violent crime or murder statistics on one city or 2 cities or 3 cities, you're going to have a skewed perception of the actual state of affairs in the country as a whole. Okay, so maybe there's a lot of shootings and killings in a city like Chicago or Los Angeles or New Orleans, but that doesn't reflect the state of affairs for most of us in the country. And it also doesn't, mean that crime is up overall. Maybe it's up in that city. It says property crime also ticked downward about 3% in the nation as a whole, though in the Northeast and in large cities over 1 million people, it increased by about the same amount. It says the quarterly report released Tuesday is based on the data sent to the FBI from about 80% of the law enforcement agencies in the country. Final detailed data for 2023 is expected to be released in the fall. President Joe Biden said the drop in the murder rate was one of the steepest in the country's history. The 1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan passed in 2021 by a Democrat-led Congress and signed by Biden allows cities and states to invest $15 billion in public safety, he said. Yeah, $15 billion in public safety. What do they mean by that? How much of that goes to the police force? What do they do actually with that money to increase public safety is what I would ask. Attorney General Merrick Garland called the data encouraging and touted law enforcement efforts to target gangs, illegal guns, and other issues. The FBI reports in line with the findings of the Nonpartisan Council on Criminal Justice, which found that homicides were down an average of 10% in a survey of 32 cities over the year before. Though it found that violent crime still remained higher than before the coronavirus pandemic in many cities. Another comment, homicides showed a steep 29% in increases in 2020, the largest one-year jump since the FBI began keeping records. The rise defied easy explanation, although experts said possible contributors included the massive disruption of the pandemic, gun violence, worries about the economy, and intense stress. Crime appeared to stay steady the following year, though a record-collecting overhaul at the FBI meant many big cities were included in the report that year. They weren't. Many big cities weren't included. FBI data showed violent crime across the U.S. decreased in 2022, nearing pre-pandemic levels, though property crime rose that year. Yeah, I don't really think it matters, like, what data you show people. If they're watching the news every day and they see, the news is showing some crime over and over again, then people come to the conclusion that, crime is crazy rampant. It's like every other news story is some crime being committed. But it's like we don't think about things clearly, and the media doesn't fairly cover shows. They're not going to get clicks if they're making news stories about people living their life normally and not committing crimes and just, living. That's boring, right? That's not going to get clicks. They have to produce content. They're trying to make money for their investors, and the advertisers need eyeballs. So, they're going to cover stuff that's going to give them eyeballs. Just because you see on the news every night some crazy thing happening doesn't mean that there's like a rampant. Those things are happening. I'm not saying that they aren't. It's just that it's not proportionate. It's not as crazy as you think it is because you're watching the news and it just seems like it's just crazy out there. It's like you also have to look at your own life and look at your own evidence and all the people that you know and things like that. Like, what things have happened in those people's lives, in your life, all the people you know, the people you work with and stuff like that. When was the last time there was a murder or something? Like, I know you can call that anecdotal evidence, and that is actually true, but you have to you have to use your discernment and not let them make you think that things are not true. And then when you see the data and you're like, no, it's not true. I saw the news and like 20 people died last night. And it's like, come on, man. This story right here is really interesting to me. It says Scott Ritter raided by the FBI. The raid conducted on Wednesday was reportedly based on the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Foreign Agents Registration Act. According to the former UN's weapons inspector, Scott, who was interviewed outside his home after the raid, told various news outlets this has a chilling effect on freedom of speech. So yeah, this guy here, he's been speaking a lot on things, and I've seen plenty of interviews of this guy. And I was thinking for the longest that they were going to come for him. And so finally it's happened. It's looking like here. says during an interview with Judge Napolitano, Scott had described Israel as the worst incarnation of what we could imagine Nazi Germany was like back in the day. Within 24 hours, his home was raided, leading many to believe that this, along with other statements critical of the U.S. government, its foreign policy, and Israel, contributed to him being targeted. I'm willing to bet absolutely that's the reason. I mean, the things he's been saying for the longest, but Israel is really, they have a lot of power here in the States, and it's really crazy that they do. It's weird to me how if any foreign country can have so much influence in our politics here in the States and the United States be okay with that. Like, that is strange to me. I think that if it was any other country other than Israel inflicting so much influence on our politics here in the United States, people would be in an uproar about it. But because it's Israel, they're like, meh. They have the right to defend themselves, They go, it's like a tick people have a tick where there's like the talking points just fall out of their mouth like crazy. Yeah, man. Like, yeah, you can have free speech as long as you want, as long as you don't talk about Israel in a negative way. You can't even win your elections. Jamal Bowman lost his election. Cori Bush just recently lost her election. They were outspoken critics of Israel in the Israel-Hamas war. And AIPAC poured money in their election to support their opponents and got them up out of there. Israel said they was going to do this. Well, the AIPAC said they were going to do this, and everybody knew. And the results are in, like, hey, no wonder the politicians are always so afraid to say anything bad about Israel, or criticize them in any way. The first thing they do is come out and say, we support Israel, it's right to defend themselves and, and all of this. And like, get on with their day. Whether they believe that or not, or they think that way or not, it doesn't matter. It's all just like they have to say that, or otherwise AIPAC's going to pour money into their opponents if they say anything other than that. Comments, it says freedom of speech and democracy. Yeah, we lack those. Another comment, they already tried to destroy him when he said there was no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq back in 2001. Yeah, so this guy's been speaking truth to power for a long time now. Comments, it says United States of Israel. Another comment, it says, you can criticize any country in America, but you can't criticize Israel. Another one, they raided his residence. Had Scott Ritter been a resident in a Middle Eastern country, they would have assassinated him. There is no democracy left in the world, and there is no freedom of speech. Yeah, it's like, what were they looking for when they raided his house? What they think they were going to find, Another comment says, is freedom of speech until you criticize Israel. Another one, but AIPAC is not a foreign agent. Another one, any dissent, government would be very proud to have someone courageous, intelligent, with a very high level of integrity and morals. Another comment, they tell us to vote to save our democracy. What a joke. Another one, when exposing a crime is treated as committing a crime, you're being ruled by criminals. Edward Snowden. That is the truth. Definitely criminals are running the show. Protect that guy Scott Ritter at all costs, man.
This morning, we have the story on an American soldier turned humanitarian in Gaza. Scott Anderson served in the U.S. Army for 21 years. He's now the director of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Now, it provides key infrastructure and social services for Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. Israel believes UNRWA is anti-Israeli. Anderson served in Afghanistan and knows all about the horrors of war. But he told Deborah Patta that nothing prepared him for the last 10 months in Gaza.
Oh, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, by far. And I've never seen anything like this scale of destruction.
After retiring from the military, Scott Anderson took a UN job in Gaza. He had found his calling.
So all these soft skills that you develop in the military really lend themselves quite well to being a humanitarian. And I find great, satisfaction in helping people. How you doing this morning, Miranda?
Anderson has been in Gaza almost constantly since the war began.
It's almost like being in a dystopian science fiction movie set when you drive around Gaza.
Perhaps one of the most depressing things about this war is that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is human-made.
Yeah, it is 100% human-made, and it could be human-solved. And all it really takes, I think, is willpower by everyone involved.
That willpower is in short supply. Aid trucks are still delayed at the border, and Anderson told us once they do get in, there is a complete breakdown of law and order.
Police aren't able to function, and because of that, criminal families have essentially taken over Rafah. We will not use armed guards. We're not going to take a life to save a life.
There is also a desperate shortage of crucial medical supplies. Anderson visited Nasser Hospital just after an Israeli strike.
You could literally smell the blood in the air. It has a tang to it, if you will. They were trying to clean blood off the floor with water. And a lot of wounds that people can normally get treated and survive would most likely develop sepsis because of the unclean environment.
Keeping civilians safe has become almost impossible. That includes humanitarian workers. Over 400 have been killed.
Are you being targeted?
I mean, I hope we're not being targeted is what I would say. Although some days it does feel like the humanitarian system is being targeted.
Israel says UNRWA is a haven for Hamas ideology and wants to declare it a terrorist organization.
These terrorists are employed by UNRWA.
In January, Israel accused 12 UNRWA staff members of being involved in the October 7 attack. They were all fired immediately.
And an unfortunate fact is that in organizations throughout history, people have chosen to put themselves above the values of the organizations they work for. You know, the United States is no different. That doesn't make those organizations bad. It made those people bad. Thank you very much.
While there have been dark moments for Anderson, there is also joy.
The very best part is that this job is education. I think it's the most important thing we do. It sets the stage for these children to achieve their dreams.
At the end of the day, Palestinians trapped in this war, he says, are no different from Americans.
They have dreams just like we do. They want the best for their children just like we do. They're human beings, just like everybody else is, with the same needs, the same desires, and the same ambitions.
For CBS Mornings, Deborah Patta, East Jerusalem.
This morning, we have the story on an American soldier turned humanitarian in Gaza.
So, yeah. Trying to make putting a face on UNRWA is a really good thing because they're trying to say that UNRWA is like a Hamas organization or whatever, friendly to Hamas and overrun by Hamas and working with Hamas or whatever, you know. And listening to this guy talk or whatever, it's really hard to believe that that could be the case. But when you hear the stories come out and they just give you the little gist of things, then it leads you to think. Because you don't have a face in the organization, it's just a name. It's like UNRWA, and then you're like, "What is that?" Or whatever. They're an arm of the Hamas, you know. It's like, come on, man. It says Scott Anderson served in the U.S. Army for 21 years. Now he's the director of UNRWA, a UN agency that operates in Gaza and occupied West Bank to provide key infrastructure and social services for Palestinians. And what's important to note about that also is they've been operating in Palestine long before the Israel-Hamas war. It wasn't like all of a sudden they went over there to try to help these people, after October 7th. That's not the case. They've been over there for the longest time. Commenter says, Israel has been intentionally bombing civilians while blocking humanitarian aid is disgusting. It says, so how are people going to say UNRWA is Hamas now? They're not going to see this news story. This story isn't going to get played over and over. Another comment says, why there's Palestinian refugees? Yes, you get it. Israel stole their land with the aid of US and UK. It says UN equals UNRWA equals Hamas. Okay. Another comment. I have to be careful with these images on here. It says, UNRWA, you mean the UN agency that is complicit with Hamas and took part in the 10 October 7 massacre that murdered and burned Israelis, including babies, and that still holds over 100 hostages, including Americans. See, this is what happens. And a lot of these are bots. And a lot of these know that this stuff isn't true. But for the rest of us, we see this stuff over and over again, and we start thinking, well, maybe it could be true. But we don't really understand. It's a UN organization. It's not a freaking arm of Hamas. Another comment, UNRWA, a proven supporter of Hamas, shame on Scott Anderson and CBS. Another comment, if Kamala Harris does not make a clear stand against Israel, then Trump becomes president. That's the only way the American people will ever let the left in power again. Take a clear stand and refuse AIPAC money. I agree with this sentiment right here. I think that, Kamala Harris has an opportunity, but it's looking like she's not going to take advantage of it. They're looking for the people on the right to vote for them. They're looking to shave off some of the Make America Great Again crowd instead of looking to their left. But the Democrats get paid to lose, so that's what they do. I think that one topic alone will be enough for Kamala Harris to win if she would embrace that. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Comment says, this tragedy is made possible by our tax dollars. Shame on our government. Another one, go Israel. Another one, complicit in terrorism. The UN itself is the house of lies. So the United Nations is complicit in terrorism. Another comment, Scott Anderson makes me proud to be an American. Steve Sosebes is another American helping Palestinian children. We need to be helping Palestinians so they can have a better future. We should be divesting from their ongoing genocide, which is being led with our tax dollars and weapons.
כולם חושבים שאנחנו הלכנו, הנה, תפסו פוזה, תפסו תמונה, תפסו פריים כזה שזה נראה כאילו אותם. בשביל זה אני יושב פה, להגן עלינו, להגן על כוח 100. גיא פלג, על מה עשית את זה? למה הכפשת את שמנו בעולם? למה ערכת את הסרטונים? אתה ערכת אותם. הם אנשים פסולים מבחינתי, יש לנו תקשורת אחרת, יש לנו התנהלות אחרת.
So 10 soldiers were arrested over the alleged sexual assault at the SDA Teeman facility. And this has been making big news. And it's also been causing like a rupture within Israeli society where you have a certain segment of society says that, death to Arabs. So, these guys are prisoners. So, whatever gets done to them in there is whatever, because, they're criminals and they're fighting against Israel. And then you have another segment of Israeli society who's like, it's not okay for you to do these horrible things to these people who are, detained. There's a certain amount of human rights that should be adhered to, to the point where you had the anti-protesters, like, because they arrested these guys, you had a bunch of people show up and protest that they were holding these guys accountable for doing this horrible stuff to these prisoners. And the Western media is not covering these stories. They're totally glossing over this whole thing, and they're saying that it's not happening, but it clearly is happening. There's all kinds of evidence. It says Israel media said the victim was hospitalized and unable to walk. That's Israel media. Okay, that's not somebody outside of Israel making this up. Why would the Israel media lie about that? It says the incident has divided Israel society. It says several Israeli politicians have defended the accused soldiers. Yeah, and I don't want to go into many details with this because this is really, really horrific. And if you're curious about it, look it up. Yeah, this is one of those ones that I don't feel comfortable talking about. It's so terrible. The caption, it says, an Israeli soldier who was detained on accusations of participating in a gang sexual assault of a Palestinian detainee has appeared on TV to defend himself. He is among 10 soldiers who were detained over the allegations. Doesn't look very detained right here. I'm gonna move on because this story is terrible. I can make my stomach turn. Is there a video in this one? I want a break. I might come back to that one. Want a little break. Let's play a little Democracy Now! And give myself a break. Let me see. Do I have the one? Okay, yeah, let's do this one. Play a little bit of this. Give myself a few minutes to get myself together here.
To Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Gaza, Israel's launched a new offensive on the southern city of Khan Yunis, attacking dozens of sites after warning people to flee, but offering no safe alternative. This is a mother fleeing yet again with her family.
We are running from the fire. We are running with our children from fear.
Where are you going now?
God knows. We are walking now. They said to go to the humanitarian areas, but there is no safe place here in Gaza. It is all destroyed and damaged.
In Gaza City, multiple children were among at least 15 Palestinians killed in more Israeli strikes targeting schools. At least 30 others were wounded.
Netanyahu, children, only God can help us. He was playing at Abdel Fattah school. He is an innocent child. They say we are terrorists. Look at what Netanyahu is doing. Look at the Arab world. Only God can help us.
Amid the mounting death and destruction, leaders of Qatar, Egypt, and the United States have called on Israel and Hamas to return to ceasefire talks. The official death toll in Gaza is nearing 40,000, though the true toll is likely far higher. In election news, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz addressed the United Auto Workers in Wayne, Michigan Thursday, where they appeared alongside UAW President Shawn Fain. The UAWs endorsed the Democratic ticket in the November election. This is Kamala Harris.
Look, even if you're not a member of a union, you better thank unions. That 5-day work week. You better thank unions for that 8-hour work day. You better thank unions for that vacation time. So I'm here to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to the sisters and brothers of UAW for all you are and all we will do over these next 89 days.
In Florida, Donald Trump held a rambling hour-long news conference from Mar-a-Lago where he attacked Harris and made a number of false claims, including that nobody died after the January 6th Capitol insurrection and that Democrats believe in killing babies.
The Democrats are really the radical ones on this because they're allowed to do abortion on the 8th and 9th month and even after birth.
Despite these comments, Trump downplayed the issue of abortion in the upcoming election. He also claimed he almost went down in a helicopter ride with former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown, and that Brown said terrible things about Kamala Harris. Willie Brown quickly refuted those lies. He said he did not fly in a helicopter with Trump. Trump also claimed he had the largest rallies, at one point comparing his January 6th Stop the Steal rally to Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech and rally on the National Mall. Also on Thursday,
that stuff about the abortions in the 9th month and after birth, like, that does not happen anywhere, like, ever. So I don't know where the hell that has come from. Can anybody who's repeating that stuff, can you put forth some evidence to support that?
Trump agreed to debate Kamala Harris on ABC News September 10th and called for 2 additional debates. Harris told reporters she was glad her opponent had finally agreed, adding, quote, "hope he shows up." In other campaign news, Kamala Harris's national security advisor, Phil Gordon, denied reports that Harris would consider an arms embargo on Israel. The embargo is a key demand of Palestinian rights defenders. We'll have more on this later in the broadcast with the co-chair of the Uncommitted National Movement, who met with Kamala Harris yesterday.
And like I said, if she was to do something like that, I think that would pretty much guarantee her a win, because these people on the left feel unrepresented. You know, they feel like, you know, there's no one in the government that's supporting them or whatever. So if they felt like, because these people aren't going to vote for Trump, okay? You know, if they're going to vote at all, they're going to vote independent. But I think a lot of these folks are going to stay home because they don't feel like any one of the options that they have are good enough options to get them up off of their couch as far as to go vote. So, but if Kamala was to give them something, then they would feel motivated to support her. And I think that would give her the win. Right now, you know, it's going to come down to neck and neck. It's going to be a coin flip. Who's going to win? It's just going to come down to, you know, the swing states and who actually shows up. It's probably going to come down to some ads that are effective, you know, in a specific swing state. So it's just up in the air. But if the Democrats actually did something to, ignite the left to support them, they would win. It doesn't look like they're going to do that. The Democrats aren't in the business of winning, I don't think so.
In more election news, the consumer advocate group Public Citizen called out the Federal Election Commission Thursday after the agency announced it will not regulate AI deepfakes in political ads before November. Public Citizen called it a, quote, shameful abrogation of the FEC's responsibilities. The group pointed to a recent post by ex-owner Elon Musk showing an AI-altered image of Kamala Harris. Musk's post was in violation of his company's own rules against posting misinformation without context.
That's so unfortunate. That is so unfortunate. So many people are going to see these videos and clips and audio, and they're going to share them on social media, and then so many more people are going to see them. And a lot of people aren't going to know that this is not real at all, that it's altered and modified and AI generated. And, the AI generated stuff is so good now. It's really, I can see it most of the time. Like, and if you pay attention, you'll be able to see that it's not real, that it's altered. You look at the lips and stuff like that, but most people aren't going to do that, and they're going to think that the stuff is real and it's going to have the impact that it's intended to have, which is really, really, really unfortunate. We're going into an election, and these types of videos are going to be rampant over the next few months. And they put context underneath our videos talking about global warming this, or COVID misinformation this, and all of this. They put all of these little, warnings underneath the videos over certain topics. So, but in politics, they're not going to be like, this is misinformation or this was AI doctored. Even when I post, like, all the stuff that I post, I have to tell if it was AI modified or whatever. Like, there's a option, there's a I have to share that. I have to tell if it's done that or not, or they'll block my stuff. So, but then you letting these people do these political ads with these AI generated stuff, and you're just gonna let them do it? That is so messed up.
Related news, tech giants Microsoft and Palantir announced they're merging their government cloud computing and AI tools to service U.S. military and intelligence agencies. Palantir's clients include ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, various police departments, and the government of Israel. In Texas, Republican Governor Greg Abbott signed an executive order Thursday requiring hospitals to obtain patients' immigration status. Abbott claims the move would help Texas calculate the cost of providing health care to immigrants. Rights groups slammed Texas's latest attack on immigrant communities, which is likely to face legal challenges. The Border Network of Human Rights in El Paso blasted Abbott for, quote, using immigrants as a scapegoats for his failed policies and political frustrations, unquote.
Yeah, so you know what they're going to do with that data. Well, part of what they're going to do is try to get more people like deported or whatever, but another part of it is just going to be using it for political capital, which is the whole thing that they do with the border anyways. And they're going to say, hey, we spent this amount in taxpayer dollars to help immigrants, healthcare services, and da 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 da. So then, it's some guy in the hospital with a heart attack or something, and they're like, yeah, we know you're in here for a life-threatening situation, but how's your immigration status? Like, can you share? Can you prove, your citizenship or whatever? It's like, bro, I came here in an ambulance. Like, I didn't bring my documents with me. Like, what a state of affairs we're in. Let's go back to this. So this one, it says Kamala Harris on reparations. It says, if we're talking about writing a check, I don't think it is that simple because that won't solve the problem. It says, we need to study the effects of generations of discrimination and institutional racism and determine what can be done in terms of intervention to correct course. Any policy that will benefit Black people will benefit all of society. So I'm not going to sit here and say I'm going to do something that only going to benefit Black people.
But in the area of reparations for descendants of Africans enslaved, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has proposed a bill to form a commission to study how to do reparations. If you elected president, would you sign that bill if it came across your desk?
When I am elected president, I will sign that bill.
But in the area of reparations for
Well, of course she's going to say that in that moment. Let's read the caption. It says, now that Kamala Harris is running for president, let's revisit her stance on reparations thus far. While she does acknowledge the impact of generations of racism, Harris has stated she does not believe in any program that will make direct payments to Black people, instead suggesting we should focus on more general social welfare programs that Black people may benefit from. What are your thoughts? You know, a lot of the stuff that Bernie Sanders was doing overwhelmingly supported Black folks. And I don't think that people realized that was happening because it wasn't being sold as, you know, reparations, or it wasn't being sold as policies for Black people. But a lot of that stuff would overwhelmingly support Black people, you know, and giving the way our society is set up, that is the best way to go. Because if you say this policy is for Black people, then it's going to get a lot of pushback. Even though, like she said, truthfully, any policies that will be put forth to help Black people would help others also. Even though that's true, if you say it's for Black people, then you're going to get a lot of pushback on that, and it's going to be really difficult for it to become a thing. But if you leave out the part that it's for Black people, and you know, just say that it's for people, then it has a much better chance of passing. And like I say, a lot of these policies, like the ones that Bernie Sanders were putting forth, would help Black people disproportionately. And the people that do know, that are paying attention, will understand that, and it will still get a lot of pushback, but there's going to be a lot of people that won't really understand that, and that'll give it a better chance of going. And it's crazy how things are where, you know, this policy would help me and my family, but because it will overwhelmingly help Black people, then I don't want it to pass because, you know, I don't want to help those Black people like overwhelmingly, like disproportionately, you know. There's never going to be, it's never going to be even and equal as far as, you know, if you come out with a policy, it doesn't equally help everyone ever, no matter what it is. Even if you like universal health care, that would benefit everybody in the United States, but it would disproportionately benefit people of color. It will. It's just a fact of reality. So that's the thing. That's the problem. That's what holds us back, is worrying about who's going to benefit the most from the policies. Instead of looking at it like, you know, this policy will benefit me and my family, so I'm going to support it. I think it's good. No. Who else is it going to support? And how much more support are those people going to get? That's what determines whether I'm going to support it or not. Very, very sad. Comments, it says, we don't need a study. That's what HR 40 is, a study. We need compensation and implementation of restitution for all that was stolen from us. And recently they had the thing that Biden did for the Black farmers, and, you know, that happened. The media hasn't been covering that. Let me see. Do I have a clip on that? the oh, I do. I have it. Boom. Let's go to this right quick. So things like these are forms of reparations, and even like the Black community, I think that they are just looking for a check or whatever, and they're not really understanding how things work or whatever. And it's like they don't notice things that do happen. That's good, and this is one of those things. Let me play this.
Hey now, I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We end today's show with the historic $2 billion payout by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to Black farmers and other farmers of color who experienced discrimination when applying to the USDA's farm loan programs. The payouts finally came 2 years after Congress funded them through the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022. USDA Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack made the announcement last week.
Now, this financial assistance is not compensation for anyone's loss or the pain endured, but it is an acknowledgement by the department. And our hope is, and the president's hope is, that this financial assistance will help many farmers stay on the farm, contribute to our nation's food supply, and continue to do what they love.
This comes after the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights confirmed as long ago as 1965 that the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, discriminated against Black farmers. But little was done to address the problem, and the number of Black-run farms dropped 96% in the last century. By 1999, 98% of all agricultural land was owned by white people. For more, we go to Boydton, Virginia. We're joined by John Boyd, a fourth-generation Black farmer and founder and president of the nonprofit National Black Farmers Association, which fought for these payouts that have now gone out. John, welcome back to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. Explain the significance of what's happening right now.
Amy, thank you so much for having me, and it's always good to spend time with you. This is a very, very historic payout for Black farmers, and I see it as a huge win for myself and the National Black Farmers Association that worked on this for nearly 4 decades. So basically, 60,000 applications were turned in, 45,000 Black farmers and other farmers of color have begun receiving checks this week and the latter part of last week. So it's very, very good news, and a total of $2 billion. So we've been waiting for this payout for a long time. And the MBFA went out and held 60 meetings, Amy, in FaceTime with our members. We sent out 130,000 postcards in the mail to all of our members, telling them how to apply for this. It took us, Amy, on average 3 to 3.5 hours to help each and every Black farmer fill out this 40-page application. So it was a very extensive process. And so we were glad to get the news that from Stephen Benjamin at the White House actually called me and told me that the checks were actually going out to farmers around the country. So we see this as a huge significance of farmers who are facing foreclosure. We have a lot of Black farmers in our organization that were facing foreclosure. So these payments are timely. It's going to help them stay on the farm, will help them improve their equipment, help them pay taxes. And I'm not saying it's a whole holistic fix, but it's certainly a huge thumb up for us. And Amy, we're still pushing for the $5 billion in debt relief. So I'm asking the administration to do that by executive order. That's what I've been having conversations with the White House to still get the $5 billion. That's the land that's owned by many Black farmers that have their deeds of trust tied up with the United States Department of Agriculture. And again, that's a decade-old request as well.
And could you explain the difference between the payments and the debt relief?
Absolutely. The payments, like you heard Secretary Vilsack mention, it was those Black farmers and farmers of color who experienced discrimination prior to 2021. So that was just about everybody in our organization that fit that definition. So that piece was totally separate than the actual debt relief, which is 120% we were promised. Black farmers who were eligible for that were sent the necessary form in the mail telling them how much debt relief they were going to get, and the 20% to pay their taxes. All of our members sent them back in, and then after that, white farmers started suing us in federal court around the country in numerous federal courts and 2 temporary injunctions, one in Florida and the other in Texas, blocking the $5 billion in debt relief to Black and other farmers of color. And then we began to file motions in federal court, and after we began to make some traction there, a few wins, the administration repealed it by an act of Congress and replaced it with some of these other measures. So we still want our land, like you talked about at the beginning of the show. We've, at the turn of the century, owned 20 million acres of land. Today, we're down as Black farmers, 3.5 million acres. At the turn of the century, we were tilling, there were 1 million Black farm families in the United States. Today, we're down to about 50,000 full-time Black farmers. So the land, as my daddy and grandfather taught me, the land is everything. The land is food, the land is water, the land is timber to build houses on. Everything comes great from the land, and we want our land. And that's what I've been after for this whole campaign, and I spoke to you about it before.
John, you mentioned your father.
So the Black folks who say that Biden didn't do anything at all, there's a thing right there that they did that was a good thing. And they say that Biden didn't do anything good. There's a good thing right there. Caption, it says, we look at the historic $2 billion payout by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to farmers who experience systemic discrimination when applying to the USDA's farm loan programs. The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights has documented how USDA administrators routinely denied loans to Black farmers and other farmers of color for many decades, contributing to a massive decline in the amount of Black-owned farms in the United States. This is a very, very historic payout for Black farmers, said John Boyd, a fourth-generation Black farmer and founder of the National Black Farmers Association, who notes the application to receive the payout was 40 pages long. He says the group is also still fighting for a related $5 billion debt relief program. I want people to know this is a big win, and don't never ever give up. The arc of justice been slow. It's been slower for Black people, but I never gave up. Comment, it says, my dad was a Black farmer. MLK Jr. said this issue was his main motivation. We need 100 million more farmers with their own land. Another one, Black farmers are also sold bad seeds, and because of this, crops failed and most lost their farms. This was calculated racism at its best. Another one, and folks have the nerve to say there's no such thing as institutional racism. Another one, he needs to name the individuals who work for the USDA and discriminated so flagrantly. They should be held personally accountable. I think that is an important thing right there. A lot of times these people are still alive. You go back and they have these reports and they have these stories and they show these things that happened that were really horrible. And then the way they do it, and then they show like this in black and white, and they make it seem like it's so long ago, and it wasn't. Not only that, a lot of these people who did these things are still alive, and the things that they did was against the law. So I don't think that we can move forward until we're holding people accountable for breaking the law. Like no one should be above the law, and maybe it takes 20 years or whatever for it to come out, 30, 40 years for it to come out. It's out. They broke the law. Hold them accountable for it, because that's going to set a precedent. That's going to set an example for other folks to do these things, to not do these things, because they're going to be afraid of being held accountable. If there's no recourse, if there's nothing that happens to them, then there's nothing to persuade them to do anything differently. They're just going to continue to do the same stuff. It's kind of like what we were talking about, what's her name? Khan from the, from the FTC, who's holding these corporations accountable for the monopolies, and it's having an effect on other companies to not want to do these mergers and, not break the law, because they're going to be afraid that the government's going to come down on their butt. So that's what it is. You hold people accountable, and it not only holds that person accountable, but it deters others from doing the same thing. Otherwise, things just continue to be the same. Comments, it says, in America, racism is still alive and thriving. Mr. Boyd is a true American. Another comment, litigation against the USDA for discrimination against African American farmers began in August 1997 with 2 suits brought by Black farmers, Pigford versus Glickman and Brewington versus Glickman. However, its origins go back to the 1960s as a result of vast USDA backlog of unresolved complaints began to build after the USDA Civil Rights Office was closed in 1983. In 2023, Senator Cory Booker reintroduced the Justice for Black Farmers Act legislation aimed to address and correct historic discrimination within federal farm assistance and lending at the USDA, causing Black farmers to lose millions of acres of farmland and rob farmers and their families of the billions of dollars of generational wealth that land represents. In 1910, Black farmers owned 16 million acres of farmland in the U.S. Today, they own 2.9 million acres and comprise less than 5% of the agricultural workforce. Yes, a lot of folks out there get really angry about this kind of stuff, and they're like, this kind of stuff isn't really happening, da 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 da. But you're just turning your eyes away from the reality of things. Just because you don't want to face it as a reality doesn't mean it's not happening. Comments, it says, I'm going to guess that this would not be in the history books written for middle school and high school students. Much respect for Cory Booker reintroducing the Justice for Black Farmers Act. Another one, previous farm owners that had to force closure because of this discrimination should sue. Another one, the hatred that Mr. John Boyd experienced really upsets me. Another one, I wish so badly my grandparents were here to see this day. It is a shame it took so long. So many died and did not see justice. So much land that was lost and stolen from Black farmers. A lot of times, the people, they're like, things are just the way that they're supposed to be or whatever. Like it just makes sense that most of the farmers are white dudes or whatever. Like, it just makes sense. A lot of this stuff, it just makes sense to them. And, the details of how things got to where they are today is something that they don't ever look at or has never been taught. So in a lot of cases, you can't really blame them for thinking that way because they were lied to too. They were also lied to. Everyone's being lied to on this kind of stuff. Comments, it says, my best Tim Scott impression. America is not a racist country. And it's fair to say that. It really is to a certain extent. You could say America is not a racist country, but you can't say there's not racist folks in America. There's a difference there. There's a distinction there. So them saying America is not a racist country is like trying to, avoid the reality of all the racism that does exist. A couple more comments. It says, and it's not just about the farming, it's about the land they stole, millions and millions of acres. Another one, $5 billion is a start. Time to give those hardworking farmers their due. Another one, a day late and $1 short. It's a $3 billion short of what they need to just break even and zero profit. One more. It says, wonderful news. Now give back the Black Wall Street and California beachfront property owners back their wealth and land. I think the United States has a certain amount of reckoning that needs to be done for it to be able to continue to survive. And I think that if the United States doesn't do those things, they're not going to make it. We have to move forward together. And the only way we can move forward together is acknowledging the past and what actually happened and trying to make it right. Just say, get over it. It's not going to work. Not going to work. We can't move forward together if we can't even agree on the facts of the matters. This one, it says Iran will face significant consequences if it attacks Israel, U.S. official. Al Jazeera. The senior U.S. administration official has warned Iran that it will face significant consequences if it decides to attack Israel. The official, which Reuters did not name, said an Iranian attack would jeopardize Gaza's ceasefire talks and result in consequences that would severely impact Iran's economy. Whenever they say stuff like consequences that will severely impact Iran's economy, that sounds like sanctions to me. It doesn't sound like an all-out war. And you know, all the parties involved are trying to avoid a full-scale hot war because we don't know what's going to happen. Like a lot of people want to be able to predict and say this is going to happen and say that is going to happen. But the smartest folks who know the most stuff about this stuff could not give you a really good prediction of what's going to happen if it turns into an all-out hot war there. We don't know. We don't know. It could go any kind of way, and no telling which players are going to get involved and which side they're going to be involved in. It's really, really scary. These are big dogs you're talking about right here. These are big dogs. These are not small players. Comments, it says, Israel attacked Iran. Iran will be rightfully defending itself. Another comment, does Iran not have the right to defend itself? Another comment, to be honest, can America please shut up? We know they're one and the same with Israel, hence zero red lines for Israel. We know America has been terrorizing the Middle East for decades. We know they place little to no value on Palestinian lives. So just please shut up. We're beyond tired of a country that claims to be a moral beacon, causing chaos for money all over the world. More comments. Getting tired of America telling the rest of the world how it should behave. Another one. Somebody tell the U.S. that assassinating Hamas negotiator in Iran is escalation. They don't know that. Another one. So let's get this straight. Israel can break international law and attack any Middle Eastern country, but for them to retaliate as per international law, the U.S. threatens them. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Another comment, hypocrisy. Iran has the right to defend itself. Israel shouldn't have attacked Iran. We have to stop defending Israel's. It's ridiculous. Another comment, Israel doesn't have a right to defend itself, but Israel, the aggressor, does. It's Al Jazeera.
Huge bomb. We know that there's an IS drone above. 10 years ago, Islamic State militants tried to wipe out the Yazidi people. They killed, raped, and enslaved thousands of them. But who are the Yazidis? And why does ISIS target them? The Yazidis are a small Kurdish religious group who come mainly from northern Iraq and Syria, but also southeast Turkey and Iran. It's thought there are fewer than 1 million Yazidis in total around the world. They believe their religion to be the oldest in the world, and it includes elements resembling Christianity and Islam. These beliefs have led them to be persecuted throughout history, but never more brutally than at the hands of the Islamic State. As part of setting up their caliphate, ISIS stormed into the Sinjar region of Iraq, where many of the Yazidis lived at the beginning of August 2014. Thousands were killed in the initial attack. Men were executed in mass graves. Boys were forcefully recruited as fighters, and thousands of women and children were taken captive as slaves. Close to 100,000 Yazidis fled up Mount Sinjar. There they were trapped for days with no food or water, many dying of thirst, hunger, injuries, or exhaustion before Kurdish forces managed to open up an escape corridor. Women particularly suffered. It's estimated nearly 7,000 Yazidi women were kidnapped. They were made to convert to Islam. Girls as young as 9 were forced into marriage and sold into slavery. Boys were taken from their families and turned into fighters and suicide bombers. They were known as the cubs of the caliphate. The Yazidi massacre has now been recognized as genocide by the UN and the UK and other countries, but there's been little to no justice for the Yazidis. 10 years on, and the Yazidis are still fighting for accountability. Their homeland is still a wasteland, and many have never returned. Even though thousands have been freed, it's estimated up to 3,000 women and children could still be held by ISIS, trapped somewhere inside the sprawling detention camps in northeast Syria.
Interesting stuff right here. It says the Kurdish-speaking minority were persecuted as devil worshippers by IS after it seized large swaths of territory in Syria and Iraq in 2014. It says Sky explains why these cities are and why ISIS targets them. You know, history doesn't happen in a vacuum. Like, history doesn't really stop. Like, today is history tomorrow, you know? And when you look at, when they talk about how, you know, like, let's say the Crusades, and they came down, they did what they did and converting people to Christianity, and then you had the Muslims pretty much doing the same thing. This is like a continuation of that. It's basically what I'm trying to say. You know, when you come and you forcibly you force people to convert, you know, you feel like they are idol worshippers or whatever, you know, you feel like their religion is illegitimate or whatever, and you come and you force them to convert. So what I'm trying to say is, you know, history continues. And when you look at it in present day, you look at it in a different way when you try to separate it from what happened in the past. But if you can look at the past as a continuation into today, then you can see how the things that happen today are trends that started, in some cases, millennia ago, and is just continuing. And then you can better understand what happened in the past, and you can also better understand what's going to happen in the future. You can understand why, you know, what the motivations are for people's behaviors, if that makes any sense. You know, simplifying things for your own mind doesn't get you to the point of understanding things better. You know, it actually has the opposite of effect. And then when you want to demonize one religion over another one, then you are not understanding what's happening, and you will fall victim to this same kind of ideology. Basically, what I'm saying is, like, from within the mind of the people who are doing this stuff, they feel like they are right. Understand? So for you as an outsider looking in, and you're like, oh, this is atrocious and this is ridiculous and this is clearly wrong, but you can be within, if your group was doing the same thing and then they told you that it was right and it was just and it was God's word and you're doing what God wants you to do, you're going to feel that it's right. And it's it's a it's a thing that really happens, where people think that if they do the exact same thing, it's right because it's their religion is the right one. The way their culture is the dominant one. The way they live life is the right way to live life. The way they worship is the right way to worship. So what I'm trying to say, like, it's, if you can look at these people and say that they're crazy, you know, that they're in a cult and they're extreme or whatever, and you could be right, but you could also be one of these people, is what I'm trying to get across. Comments. It says, "This is my simple question: why has ISIS never attacked Israel?" Good question. Very, very, very good question. Another comment says, "Why is Sky News showing reports from 2014? Try reporting about the genocide that is happening now in Gaza." Well, again, what happens in history leads to what's happening now. So it's important. It's important so that you can understand what's happening now, how we got here. Comments, it says, "ISIS would not exist if the America didn't ruin the entire region. Everything wrong with this region has been caused by the US, Britain, and the NATO puppets." Oh. It says, "ISIS doesn't represent Islam. End of debate." 100% true on that. Another comment, "ISIS created by USA and Israel. It has been proven so many times. Canada, England, joint operation. They took Shaman Begum to ISIS. It has been proven. So this people killed by US and allies." Another comment, "Here Muslims are defending what's all written in Quran. Haha, it's like chicken defending KFC." Another comment, "The story is 100% of what happened in Palestine and Gaza." Another comment, "Islam has two sides, the diplomatic axis and the terror axis. Let's be clear," in Sleepy Joe's voice, "they are both working towards the annihilation of minority religion groups around the world in the collective aim of advancing Islam. Guess what? The diplomatic wing will never publicly accept that what the terror wing are doing is the real Islam as found in the Quran. It's working for overall advancement of Islam. Little wonder why Hamas has the political and the terror wing. Same Saudi, UAE, Qatar, political wing, Iran, Afghanistan. It's a terror wing. Let's be clear. They're all brothers behind closed doors, but we're not ready for this conversation." This person, I don't think they really, they think they know what they're talking about, but they're not. For one, they left when they said these. Well, they did mention Saudi Arabia. Damn, I lost my train of thought here. You know, if all of this is true, what this guy is saying, then why does the United States support some of these and are against others? So he has a list here: Saudi, UAE, Qatar. Those are not enemies of the United States. And he's calling them the political wing. And then you've got Iran, Afghanistan, etc. is the terror wing. So those are the ones that are enemies, quote unquote, of the United States. So, like, what does that really mean? Like, so how does the West, does the West support the political wing and not the terror wing, if you will, based on the way you're saying this? Is there a differentiation between the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Iran, Afghanistan? You know, is it related to how they worship? Like, you can't simplify this. You know, it's way more complicated. Talking about what did he say? The diplomatic wing will never publicly accept what the terror wing are doing is the real Islam as found in the Quran. I don't know, but you know, the Islam, Christianity, Judaism, they're all Abrahamic religions and they are very, very similar, you know, and updating these religions for people is the way you do it to get more people like on board. And if people don't get on board, you know, as a result of, you know, updating the religion, then you just force them. So that's the reason why I have a problem with following traditions. You know, just because my parents and grandparents did something doesn't mean that I have to do that thing. You know, I'm not a bad guy because I decide to not, you know, have the same religion as my parents or grandparents or whatever. You know, I really don't understand how people can continue to follow a tradition that was forced on their ancestors. Anyways, it takes years, you know, for things to come out and be talked about properly. So that's another reason why history is important because any contemporary stuff is always controversial. You know, if it's less than 10 years old, it's controversial. And they're not going to be able to talk about it honestly. You know, as time goes on, then they can finally call, you know, a duck a duck. They can say such and such as genocide. You know, right now, what's happening to the people in Palestine is genocide, and then people are like, "Oh, you're being over melodramatic or whatever." But without a doubt, when time passes, they're going to call it that, and it's going to be a general consensus of it. You just can't say it now because it's presently happening. Speaking of genocide, it says Western leaders snub 79-year Nagasaki tradition in solidarity with Israel. This is interesting. For 79 years, global leaders have participated in memorial ceremonies held in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These ceremonies serve to honor the victims of the bombings and to promote a message of peace and nuclear disarmament. US and UK ambassadors will skip a ceremony marking the 79th anniversary of the bombing of Nagasaki after Israel was uninvited. US, Britain, Australia, Germany, Italy, Canada, and the EU signed a strongly worded joint letter scolding Nagasaki's mayor. So look at this. US, Britain, Australia, Germany, Italy, Canada, and the EU are skipping this because Israel wasn't invited. It says 250,000 civilians perished when the US bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So it says 79 years ago, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki claimed 250,000 civilian lives. Today, the very nations responsible for that atrocity are skipping the memorials citing solidarity with Israel after the mayor of Nagasaki disinvited Israel. That is so ironic, bro. It says attending these memorials is more than a ceremonial act. It is a gesture of respect and acknowledgement of past atrocities. Participation reinforces a global commitment to peace and the prevention of future nuclear conflicts. The absence of Western leaders, but especially the US, can and should be perceived as a disregard for the victims and the critical lessons history has taught us about the consequences of nuclear warfare. Those no longer attending US, UK, France, Australia, Italy, and Canada is the irony just completely lost on them Or are we dealing with something else here? You know, we may be dealing with something else here. We also may be inching towards a repetition of history. You know, when you get to the point and you forget about history and how horrible the thing was, you know, and you downplay it and, you know, justify it or whatever, or it just becomes politicized, you know, that's dangerous territory. And, you know, what I would take from this is that we are closer to a repeat of an atrocity similar to these. And with the Middle East heating up, it's, you know, things don't happen in a vacuum. Things are not random. You know, everything is connected. It's a global community, it's a global world. So when you've got, you know, them trying to remember Nagasaki and Hiroshima and pay respects to the people who lost their lives, and also put forth that community effort to not let this thing happen again. And then you got the community not want to be involved in that. That leads to the risk of something very similar happening again. Because it's like when they talk about the Holocaust, then they're like, never forget, never again, right? So this situation right here should be the same. Never forget and never again. But then when it becomes political, then never forget, never again is not so much. Comments, it says, they're not leaders, they're colonizers and white supremacists. Why are they even invited? When have they ever promoted actual liberation or peace? All they do is uphold the things that were founded on white supremacy, colonization, enslavement, capitalism, destruction, ecosystems, cultures. You know, I mean, that's a fair argument, but we have to move forward together. And them being invited and showing up, it shows that it's like an admission of guilt. It's like realizing that this was a horrible thing and it should be respected, it should not be forgotten, and it should not be repeated. It's a ceremonial thing. It's an optical thing, because if you feel obligated to go with the optics of the situation, that has, you know, it creates a degrees of separation from making that thing happen again. That makes any sense. Like, it's a necessary thing. It's like a reminder. Let's not do this again. But if you feel like you don't need to respect it, then, you know, the idea of not doing it again is now lost. Becomes lost. You have to have a reminder of it, and a reminder that it shouldn't be done again. Comments, it says, this is much more than a disregard for the victims of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. It's a signal that they are considering using nuclear weapons in defense of their spoiled child Israel. See, this is exactly what I'm saying right here. This week, the U.S. sent a B-2 stealth bomber, a nuclear aircraft, to Qatar in preparation for retaliation by the Axis of Resistance for Israel's assassination of Hezbollah and Hamas leaders. Israel and the U.S. may escalate to nuclear warfare because they cannot win this fight. They are depleted militarily, diplomatically, economically, etc. Dark times are ahead of us. See, that's scary right here. Because this is exactly what I was thinking right here. You know, and I saw the pictures of the bomber that they sent over there, and all of the big ships are sitting out there in the water right now. And they're ready to go, you know, fingers right next to the button. And a retaliation is in the works right now against Israel. And who knows how big it's going to be. and how Israel's going to respond, how the U.S. is going to respond. We're going to see. Comments, it says, who the hell invites their aggressors to remember the victims? Imagine inviting the killer to remember the murdered person. It's a fair comment, it is, but it's like, it's not as simple as that. I mean, you need it. It's if the murderer can show up and say, I'm sorry, I apologize, I was wrong, that's a reason for them to show up. Another comment says, yet again, Izzy is involved in another drama. If I were the organizers of this memorial, I would change the messaging towards a stern warning of how these countries, with their actions, show their selective outrage when it comes to human lives of others they deem worthless. I would give a short history by naming countries responsible for the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombing in the first place. I would lament on everything that they did and might do because their precipitation was performative in the first place. It bears no meaning to them after all. The remembrance of the victims is not less than because they aren't showing up. In fact, it is going to be more meaningful because the genocidal countries will not be involved. By them nor being there, it meaning you no longer have to tone police or tone down the real truth about who did what and how. Furthermore, I would extend an invitation to all indigenous leaders around the world. They can come in with traditional regalia. They might understand the significance of the memorial more than those other ones in any case. Where'd the oil come from? Is it really bad? Just let it burn slow and turn on the fan. The vent. The West doing everything it can to help see its evil clearly. Some will still have their eyes closed after this, but this group is getting smaller by the day. I don't know. I think we're in scary times, man. 79 years since that atrocity happened. I guess that's long enough to put distance between how horrible the atrocity was. Enough for them to, do it again. Really scary times. It says Israel's Netanyahu calls occupied West Bank part of our homeland. Al Jazeera. It says in an interview with Time Magazine, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defends Gaza war and reiterates opposition to Palestinian sovereignty. Less than a month after the International Court of Justice ruled that Israel's occupation of Palestinian territory is unlawful and must end as rapidly as possible, Netanyahu has said his country will not relinquish control over the occupied West Bank. It's part of our homeland. We intend to stay there, Netanyahu said the occupied Palestinian land in an interview with Time Magazine published on Thursday. Yeah. No intentions of de-escalation. Comments, it says, Poland is your homeland, colonizer. Another one, Tel Aviv is part of Palestine. Israel is only imaginary. Another comment, he was born and raised in Philadelphia and currently uses a fake name to sound more Jewish. Another one, colonizer being a colonizer. Another comment, the real question is, why did Time Magazine interview this person? Another one, Palestine will be free from Zionists. Another one, in 10 years, there will be no more Israel, Henry Kissinger. Yeah. All those comments pretty much saying the same thing. Let's move on. It says some Houstonians may lose power for 48 hours as CenterPoint installs new poles and trim trees. This is interesting because, like, after going through what they went through after the storm already, not having power, some people up to 2 weeks or more, and then gonna possibly lose power for 4 to 8 hours. As CenterPoint installs new poles and trim trees, I think a lot of people will be really upset. They're gonna be like, "What the f?" But in defense of CenterPoint, I mean, they need to do these types of things, and it's hopefully they can become more resilient, and install stuff that's gonna be able to handle storms better. Improve the grid, you know, make it more durable. Hopefully they can do that. And I think it'd be okay. You lose 4 to 8 hours of power as they make, you know, as they upgrade the system and make it more durable so that the next storm comes through, you don't lose power for 2 weeks. I think that's a fair trade. I know it's really, really hot right now, but it's going to be really hot. The next storm comes and you can't turn on your AC for 2 weeks. A lot of people died in the storm, and most of the deaths were as a result of the heat. And now that is really, really sad when you have a storm comes, trees fell on some houses and that killed a couple of people, but most of the deaths happened as a result of the power not being on. Those are preventable deaths. It's not like the storm came through and, like I said, a tree fell on them, or, it was, they got house flooded, or they got drowned from inundated from water or something like that, which you can chalk up to, the storm. But if people have died just because the lights were off, that is very, very sad. Houston Chronicle, it says some Houstonians may lose power for 4 to 8 hours over the next 30 days as CenterPoint Energy installs stronger power poles, trim vegetation, and installs devices that help reduce outages following a directive from Governor Greg Abbott, the company said in a statement. Those temporary outages are necessary to keep the public and our workers safe as we complete this important work, CenterPoint CEO Jason Wells wrote in a letter to customers. We know that any outages, even one necessary for safety, can be frustrating for our customers, Wells wrote. Yeah, hopefully they do, work over the whole damn thing. I really think that company should be broken up, but they got a monopoly. So I think that regardless of what happens, it's going to be bad when you have just one company who's covering so much area and so many customers. It's the fourth largest city in the United States, and you got one company who does all of this infrastructure work. They're responsible for too much. They got too much on their plate. Another comment, it says, I think many of y'all complain just to complain. Everyone demanded CenterPoint be proactive in repairing our power grid and not reactive. Yet many of y'all are complaining because it's August. Hurricanes are on the way in August and September, not wintertime. Y'all better find a movie theater or indoor public place to chill while your power's out and stop tripping with yourselves. 4 to 8 hours, it's not that long, bro. It's like you got to go to work anyways. Hopefully they do it in the daytime when you're at work. Otherwise, go walk in the mall or something. Another comment says, can we pick another month, for example, January? No, because you're going to be hot. It's Houston. It's hot in January too. You crazy? And you got hurricanes likely on the way right now. Another comment says, it's definitely better to know in advance so people can properly prepare. Yeah. Send them some kind of messages and let them know power's going to be out. It says, another comment says, don't do it in the hottest month of the year. Come on, didn't they learn people were dying from overheating? 4 to 8 hours is not a long time, bro. And the hurricanes possibly are coming, bro. Florida just got messed up. What was it, Debbie? Debbie just came through and messed them up, bro. Another comment, when did they release a schedule by zip code or something? Another one, the whole city has PST now. PTSD, yes. We definitely do. We definitely do. Another one. Well, they better do this when it's not over 100 degrees. How can they control what temperature is going to be outside, bro? They don't have no control over that. Another comment that says, hopefully they let us know when that day will be, but knowing Centerpoint, they won't. You'll just randomly lose electricity. And why do this in August? Couldn't it wait till October? No, it's not going to be any cooler in October anyways. You know Houston weather, bro. It's still going to be in the 90s in October. You can pretty much bet that. They need to be prepared for those storms that's coming, possibly coming right now. It's a good chance that we're going to get hit with another one.
I think, like most Americans, I could not believe it. It seemed like that would be impossible. There'd be a loophole there. It seemed impossible that anyone would do it. But the fact we're done seemed to show that, lo and behold, members of Congress outperform the stock market by about 6 to 10% on a regular basis. Now, that may be due to the infinite wisdom that resides in these halls, or it could be something different. Luck, smart, savvy trading, or the possibility that there was insider knowledge. It's not about trying to get involved too deeply in the SEC's responsibility. It's trying to clarify for the American public that their public servants are held not just to the same law. I would argue we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We need to make it perfectly clear so that when they hear our debates, they differ with us on the substance of the debate, not on our motives.
Yes, so that was Tim Walz talking about stock trading for congressional folks, which I think should not be a thing. Represent Us, it says, sharing Tim Walz's take on why we should ban congressional stock trading. It's great to see politicians on both sides of the aisle support common sense legislation. He was right back in 2011, and we're still fighting for it now. The Ethics Act is our best chance yet to end conflicts of interest and ensure our representatives serve the people, not their portfolios. Let's push for transparency and accountability in Congress. So, yeah, this is the guy who, if I'm not mistaken, he's the guy who Kamala Harris has chosen to be her running mate for the 2024 election. And this clip was from 2011. Comments, it says, he's a socialist. Please be careful of showing only one side, as people will get a warped opinion of him, I guess they meant to say. So boxing him into a socialist is like, that's a scary word. He's a socialist. What do you have to support that? And it says showing only one side. What do you mean showing only one side? I mean, on this topic, we're talking about Congress trading stocks. Are you supportive of Congress being able to trade stocks using insider information, or do you have a problem with it? Let's focus on the policies, the issues, what we're talking about here. Comment says, every clip I see, I keep liking him better. Another one, outperformed by 6 to 10%. Question mark. Yeah, maybe 20 years ago, they outperformed by 1,000% now. Have you seen Pelosi's returns? Another comment, it says, well, that was 2011, so that was a good, 13 years ago. Another comment says, too bad he is wrong about everything else. Another comment, I agree with him on this. It's where men can have babies and fight in women's sports, open borders and tax, and spend more where he loses me. What do you have any evidence that this guy supports men fighting in women's sports or open borders? That comment was not very well written either. Another comment says he's a good guy. Another one, we did a good thing here. Another one, I think the SAFE Act, proof of citizenship to vote, is a little more of a pressing issue currently, and we should be more focused on getting that passed before the election. Okay, so just let the Congress keep on screwing over everybody. It ain't gonna matter what your vote is if the politicians are cashing in and not representing the people. Like, regardless of who you vote for, they are cashing in and using their insider knowledge to make trades in the stock market to get rich, as opposed to representing the people. No, I think this is a really important issue. It's like, what are they there for? Are they there to support or represent their constituents, or are they there to get rich? Because if they're there to get rich, then they're not going to be doing anything for you. Another comment says his pal Pelosi wouldn't bring it to the House floor for a vote when she was Speaker. Yeah, I remember, and I think that they want to say that, and they asked her about that, and she was like, what did she say? She was like, no, I think that we are American people just like everybody else, and we should be able to trade stocks just like anybody else. Like, whatever, lady. No, if you want to just trade stocks, then don't be in freaking the government. Go just be a citizen and go trade stocks. Go home and trade as many stocks as you want. It says, and Obama did nothing about it. True. Another comment says, when Trump says radical, this is what he means. Another one, unfortunately, no Republicans and most Democrats in Congress, like Pelosi, will vote to ban insider trading by members of Congress. I don't think so either. I really don't. I don't see either side supporting it. They want to have their chance to be able to, cash in. They got so many different ways to cash in.
That the Israeli ambassador be present.
Look, we thought it was important that the Israeli ambassador be invited, as the ambassadors of other countries have been invited, that no country that should have been singled out to not be invited to this celebration. And that's why the ambassador took the step that he did. And I presume why the ambassadors of other countries took the steps that they did in deciding not to attend.
Why is it so important that the Israeli ambassador be present?
Look, we thought it was important that the Israeli ambassador be invited, as the ambassadors of other countries have been invited, that no country that should have been singled out to not be invited to this celebration. And that's why the ambassador took the step that he did. And I presume why the ambassadors of other countries took the steps that they did in deciding not to attend.
It's like, why is it so important for Israel to, be able to attend this freaking event? It's like, you can't single out nobody. That's the reason why we chose not to go, because y'all singled out somebody. It says Japan didn't invite the Israel ambassador to the ceremony for the obliteration of Nagasaki while Israel was actively obliterating Gaza. So the U.S. is boycotting the ceremony of its obliteration of Nagasaki in solidarity with Israel's obliteration of Gaza. That's one way to put it. Nothing new under the sun. It says, you can't make this up. We're living in a movie. And it's like having an out-of-body experience of disbelief of what's actually happening.
Talks about President Biden. He says that he doesn't believe Biden wanted to drop out. He says it's unconstitutional to have Biden drop out, which is not true. Biden dropped out on his own volition. There's nothing unconstitutional about that. He says it's unconstitutional that Democrats haven't had a primary process. That's not true at all. One more thing, just to show you how freewheeling this press conference is, to your point, Kira, is he does make that comment about crowd size. Somebody asks him about Harris's rallies and their crowd size and the fact that they have broken broken records for Democrats this cycle. And that is the thing that Trump seemed to have the most fiery response about. Clearly, it hits at him in a certain way. And he mentioned that he has big crowd size. And then he went on to say in a question about January 6th that he said he had a bigger crowd, or a crowd that rivaled MLK's I Have a Dream speech when he spoke to that Stop the Steal rally on January 6th. Trump talks about President Biden. He says that he doesn't believe Biden wanted to drop out. He said,
ABC News, it says, fact checks Trump's press conference saying that despite Trump's claims otherwise, there is nothing unconstitutional about Biden dropping out. Comments, it says, you news networks better start calling about his cognitive decline as the old man in the race as much as you did about Biden. Another one, he's completely losing his mind live and in front of millions. Let's see. Another comment says, he's more unhinged than usual. It's over for you, Donnie. You love Kamala, and so do many Republican wives. They just don't tell who they voted for. Another comment, every day in every way Trump displays his insanity. All the comments are the same. Let's move on. It says GOP budget plans spotlight party's top priority, handouts for the rich. Republicans would rather protect their billionaire friends at the expense of everyone else, said the chair of the Joint Economics Committee. Common Dream just says, budget proposals released by Congress Republicans in recent months lay bare the party's desire to slash taxes for wealthy Americans and large corporations at the expense of key government programs and services, including nutrition assistance, environmental protection, and Medicaid. That's according to an analysis released Wednesday by Democrat on the Joint Economic Committee, which examined budget plans the GOP has released as Congress works to craft and pass government funding bills for the coming fiscal year. The JEC specifically cites a fiscal year 2025 budget proposal published in March by a Republican Study Committee, a panel comprised of 3/4 of the House GOP caucus. The plan, the GEC Democrat noted Wednesday, claims to balance the budget by cutting Medicare spending, raising the retirement age for Social Security, capping funding for Medicaid and CHIP, and cutting the rest of non-defense discretionary spending by 31% across the board. This would drive up health costs for American families by increasing premiums for Affordable Care Act, healthcare plans, and getting rid of protections of people with pre-existing conditions, a new analysis says. It would also prohibit Medicare from negotiating down prescription drug costs. A separate proposal from Republicans on the House Budget Committee claims it would finance large tax cuts for the wealthy by both slashing key services and assuming that their tax giveaways lead to unrealistic levels of economic growth, the Democratic report says. Analyzing this budget with more reasonable economic assumptions instead shows that budget would likely require the government to eliminate most federal services within a decade, the report adds. That's kind of extra over the top, but yeah, I think that, you have those headlines and you have those slogans and you have those things that the politicians say, and then people don't take time to look and see what the hell that actually means. Like the one where you had Trump talking about not taxing Social Security or whatever. And then you had people who started looking into that and seeing what that really means. And then it turns out that it's not necessarily a good thing. Like on its face, it sounds like a good thing, but in practice, it's probably not once you look through the details of how they plan on doing that particular thing. So I think that, they love us to be stuck on the, cultural issues and simplify things and put things in a box and be like, those guys are bad and their policies are bad or whatever, instead of any of us actually digging through the policies and what they actually mean and how they will actually work out. Some of the things you can do is look at the trends related to what they've done in the past. And I mean, you don't never know what they're going to do exactly in the future, but it can give you a good idea. because whatever they did in the past, they're likely to do similar things in the future. And, whenever they're talking about cutting taxes, how many times have, when they said they were going to cut taxes, how many times have that affect you personally? And depending on where you are in the tax bracket determines, who they're talking about when they say they're cutting taxes. Comment, it says, that's the only strategy, tax cuts and the privatization of everything. Another comment, this is different from the opposition party in what way? There's one party, it should be obvious to anyone over 40 who pays any attention that the Republican Party is a fake opposition party. It's an ancient practice occurring in so many democratic countries. They all serve the super rich. Stop feeding the fire of division. Americans, we the people don't actually want different things. We don't truly align with falsely upheld ideologies. We are waking up. I completely agree with this comment right here. I completely agree with this. It says they all serve the super rich. Stop feeding the fire division. When you are pointing to one side or the other, it's those guys, they suck. It's those guys' fault. Everything is fucked up because of them. That's exactly what they want you to be, and it doesn't even matter which side you're on. They're winning if you're thinking like that. It's the corporations who get what they want every time. I mean, look at the record. The people agree overwhelmingly on most of the issues, most of the policies, most of the stuff that really matters to Americans. They overwhelmingly agree, and they are on both sides, but they're getting screwed and they don't get what they want, and then they get confused and thinking that it's the other side that's keeping them from getting what they want, when it's probably the same side that they support that's keeping them from getting what they want. And they're keeping you distracted. It's like a magic trick. It's like, look at this hand while I do this with this hand, like they're running out the back door with the bag while they're making you look at some stupid magic trick, some stuff about cultural issues. And it's lies. It's fake. It's not true. It's just like magic. It's not real.
Toward a consequential presidential election without federal regulation on deceptive deepfakes in political ads.
I'm not sure there's the political dynamic that's going to get this thing across the finish line.
For months now, Robert Weissman with Public Citizen has pushed the federal government to ban political deepfake images, videos, or voiceovers, which are increasingly harder to detect.
So it's entirely possible that we're going to have late-breaking deepfakes before Election Day that show a candidate drunk or saying something racist or behaving in an outrageous way when they never did any of those things.
The Federal Communications Commission is racing to finalize a rule mandating all TV and radio political ads made with AI include a disclaimer.
You're up against a tight timeline now, though.
Nearly 24 states already passed bills to clamp down on AI-generated images. However, federal legislation remains stalled.
I object.
Citing First Amendment concerns, last week Senate Republicans blocked two bipartisan bills, one to ban deepfakes in political ads, another to label political ads that use AI, like the parody video recently shared by ex-CEO Elon Musk. The video uses AI to impersonate the voice of Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris.
There was no disclaimer. I just think it's outrageous if we let this continue.
Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar is promising to keep up the pressure. Once lawmakers return to Washington, the U.S. is hurtling toward a consequential presidential election without federal regulation on deceptive deepfakes in political ads.
I think that everybody should be concerned about this, no matter which side you're on. You're getting misled with these, these AI generated content that is difficult for you to determine that it's not real. And then, we get heavily influenced by what comes down our timeline. And we act like we don't, but we do. And, no matter which side you're on, you should be concerned with this because your guy could end up losing as a result of some widely shared fake video. It says political deepfakes are a threat to democracy. Robert Weissman, co-president of Public Citizen, explains how. Another comment, it says, so then you're perfectly fine with libelous content of any kind. Another one, it's so adorable what this account is worried about. What is that supposed to mean? Another comment, so basically saying is that AI has no use because it can be used to deceive the public. Can't imagine how many scammers love AI. So in the heck, invent something that can use against the people. I'm trying to decipher your comment here and struggle, but AI has no use because it can be used to deceive the public. No, they're not saying that at all. You can use AI all kinds of different ways, good ways. But it's like a tool, like you say, a butter knife. You can spread butter on a piece of bread, or you could cut somebody with it. It's how it's being used. And the people they put those disclaimers on there about COVID and about global warming and all of that. They put them little disclaimers underneath the posts about that. They should put the disclaimers that says this is a AI manipulated deal so that people can know. Another comment says democracy needs to be threatened because it's evil. And if it's so fragile, it can be destroyed by a deep fake. It should. Banning deep fakes violates your First Amendment rights. I disagree with that. I mean, hopefully people are smart enough to be able to detect something that's not real. But, the reality is a lot of people aren't. And a lot of people they're going to think this stuff is real. And then you're going to have people that know that it's not real and they're going to share it too. Anyways, that situation should bother everyone.
The abortion issue has been very much tempered down. And I've answered, I think, very well in the debate. And it seems to be much less of an issue, especially for those where they have the exceptions, as you know. And I think it's when I look for 52 years, they wanted to bring abortion back to the states. They wanted to get rid of Roe v. Wade. And that's Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and everybody, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back in the states. And I did that. Now the states are voting. And frankly, some of the votes are much more, if you could say, liberal than you would think. I think that abortion has become much less of an issue. It's a very small, I think it's actually going to be a very small issue. What I've done is I've done what every Democrat and every Republican wanted to have done, and we brought.
I don't think it's going to be a small issue. I think it's one of the big issues in this election, but I could be wrong. So Donald Trump said in a Mar-a-Lago press conference Thursday that he thinks the abortion issue has been very much tampered down and that it will be a very small issue in the presidential election. Comments that says, I wonder how many abortions Donald Trump has paid for. Another comment, did you hear that, ladies? He thinks your health care is much less of an issue. All he does is lie. Time to go down. Donnie Downer. CBS News. Another comment, the female vote is scaring the hell out of him. Another one, we aborted Trump in 2020. Another one, of course it's a small issue to him. He does not value women. Another comment, our civil rights should not depend on which state you live in. Another comment, yeah, his VP saying childless cat ladies are ruining America really tampered down the abortion issue. Another one, Roe is a key issue with women. Another one says, how anyone still listens to his dribble. Another one, roll your vote. He's not telling the truth. Another one, Wrong answer is still very well maybe the issue that sinks your little boat at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, I think it's a bigger issue than maybe him talking like that is like trying to make it not a big issue, but I think it is. Daily Beast, Vets Group calls BS on GOP attack of Tim Walz military service. Facts versus fiction, Tim Walz record. Fiction, Tim Walz retired because he knew he was going to be deployed to Iraq. Facts, BS, Tim submitted his retirement request to the U.S. Army National Guard months prior to notification of his unit's deployment. His unit was fully sourced, staffed, and his request was approved. He retired in May 2005. Tim Walz is using a rank he didn't attain, and that's stolen valor. BS, and the Minnesota National Guard says it's BS. It's entirely accurate to describe Tim as having been a commander sergeant major, the rank under which he served, and the Minnesota National Guard has emphasized in public statements that he can be referred to as such. Says, of course, General Kellogg knows better than this. Tim Walz, like countless other National Guard and Reserve members, deployed under Operation Enduring Freedom in support of that mission. He never claimed to have fought in Afghanistan. Don't take our word for it. Take Fox News' word right here. If General Kellogg or anyone else thinks veterans are going to sit by and let him peddle BS, think again. This ain't 2004, and soft boating ain't going to fly this time. So it says, Keith Kellogg, he says, Governor Walz, this is now personal. My youngest son, daughter, and son-in-law served in a combat in Afghanistan. Some of our greatest young men and women love have died fighting in our nation, Afghanistan. You have stolen a legacy.
A bit Karen-y, but here's the problem with that. Vote Vets came out immediately with a fact check. Governor Walz submitted his retirement request months prior to notification that his unit was going to be deployed to Iraq. The Minnesota National Guard has also confirmed Walz's rank is accurate. It is not stolen valor. And let's just be clear, J.D. Vance was in the comms side in the military, in the Marines. He was not shooting it out on the front line. So he's not exactly some heroic war hero. Stuart Stevens, that was a bit Karen-y, but here.
People to judge. Come to think of it, denigrating. Ugh, why can't I talk today? Come to think of it, denigrating the worth of a soldier's service based on whether he deployed to a war zone is kind of like denigrating the worth of a woman's citizenship based on whether she happens to have children. Pete Buttigieg is pretty clever with his word usage. I ain't gonna lie. You know, people who were like in reserves and National Guard and stuff like that, you know, the people who were actually in like military service, there is definitely a difference there. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not trying to belittle anyone or whatever, but there's a difference between National Guard folks, reserve folks versus active duty folks. So, I mean, hey, I mean, it is what it is. You know, I mean, trying to point out those differences and make it some kind of political thing to decide on who you want to vote. You want to vote for whoever you want to vote for, or whatever, like whatever the motivating factors that lead you to vote for who you want to vote for, that's yours personally. But trying to say that they're the same, that is just simply not the case. It says J.D. Vance has a long record of attacking U.S. troops and veterans. In less than 2 years in Congress, he voted no on pay raise for U.S. troops, no on funding for the VA, no on expanding home care for veterans, No on aid to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. No on border security. I like the no on aid to Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. Joyanne Reed. And now a few thoughts from Vote Bets about the Chris Civita retweet of the Swift boat attacks he dropped on John Kerry back in 2004, funded by Clarence Thomas, Paymaster Harlan Crow, which is now trying to on Coach Waltz as Trump's campaign manager. This is just a bunch of political like BS, I would say. Yeah, I would say that's a bunch of political just crap. That's a big pile of political poop. It says Tim Waltz is just like us. He doesn't own stocks, bonds, or real estate. It says a financial disclosure revealed that Waltz doesn't own a single stock, bond, or piece of real estate or business. He also doesn't have any book deals, speaking fees, or crypto. Tim and Gwen Walt's only investment appears to be their pensions. In 2019, Waltz and his wife sold their previous home for less than $315,000 to move into the governor's mansion. They had originally purchased the property in 1997 for $145,000. Why would you sell your house to move into the governor's mansion? So what happens when you're no longer a governor? That don't seem like a wise thing to do. It says Waltz and his wife had a net worth of $112,000 to $330,000 per 2019 disclosure. That's a wide range right there. 112 to 330. So where is it? Is it closer to the 112 or is it closer to the 330? That's really strange. That's a wide range. It says this is in stark contrast to JD Vance, who has an estimated net worth of $3 million to $10 million. Another wide range, $3 million to $10 million. You know, whenever people are talking about how much somebody is worth or whatever, I'm always like, man, I'm gonna have to call BS, because how hell do you know? Like, really, like, if you just straight up and ask anybody, somebody you know, your friend, hey, how much money do you have, or how much money you make, even, or something like that, there's a good chance that they're not gonna tell you the truth or whatever. Like, you know, and you can't look at their bank account. So I don't know. What difference does it make anyways? I mean, I guess what they're trying to say is that, you know, JD Vance is fairly wealthy and he's going to look out for wealthy individuals, and Waltz is not wealthy and he's going to look out for people who aren't wealthy. But that may not necessarily be the case. Just because they're wealthy, you know, doesn't mean that they're going to look out for wealthy people. And just because they're not wealthy doesn't mean that they're going to necessarily look out for people who aren't wealthy. You know, it could totally go the other way. That's not evidence to say that. It says Walter's salary as governor of Minnesota is $127,000. He was eligible for a raise last year to $149,000. However, he denied it. So now that is an actual telling information right there. So I guess he feels like, you know, the 127 is enough. I always ask people, how much is enough? How much is enough? You know, and the thing is, a lot of people can't really answer that question. And, you know, and if they're really going to be honest with themselves, it's never enough. They want to compete with their friends and neighbors and whatever. So, you know, their neighbor has more square footage. They have a newer car. So they got to keep up with the Joneses. It's exponential growth. It says, unlike the typical elected official, Tim Waltz does not own any stock, bonds, or real estate, according to the Minnesota governor's latest financial disclosure. It aligns with Waltz's stock record in Congress, having championed the Stock Act, which is aimed at reducing insider trading and elected of elected officials. It was signed into law by Obama in 2012. So if the the Stock Act was signed into law, then why are they still trading stocks? Help me understand that. Comments, it says, the more I learn about Governor Walz, the more I think he was the best VP pick possible. He is truly in politics for the people and to make a difference. Another comment, this is once in 100 years kind of politician by American standards. Hope they don't mess this up. Another one, sold his house because he moved into the governor's mansion. Then during renovations, wanted the taxpayers to pay for multi-million-dollar rental. Another comment, Harris Walz 2024, all the way down, we are saving our democracy. Another one, he turned down a raise and he didn't have to. Doesn't sound like he's staying to get rich off of others. That's a refreshing change. I'm getting tired, y'all. Cybersecurity researchers finds yet another flaw in Georgia's voter cancellation portal. In Georgia, a new online portal contained what experts described as a serious security vulnerability that would have allowed anyone to submit a voter cancellation request for any Georgian. All that was required was a name, date of birth, and county of residence, information easily discoverable online. It's a terrible vulnerability to leave open, and it's essential to be fixed, said cybersecurity researcher Jason Parker, who identified the flaw and alerted ProPublica and Atlanta News First. The flaw has since been fixed. Oh, so it has been fixed. So then why are you even talking about it? The issue Parker exposed was as bad as any voter cancellation bug could be, and incredibly sloppy coding, said Zach Edwards, a senior threat researcher at the cybersecurity firm who reviewed the flaw at ProPublica's request. It probably wasn't a sloppy coding. It was probably on purpose. It says, it's shocking to have one of these bugs occur on a serious website. Parker, the cybersecurity researcher, said it took them less than 2 hours of poking around the website to find the vulnerability. In a video shared with ProPublica, they demonstrated how the registration cancellation tool could be exploited in roughly a minute. Days after the portal's July 29th launch, the Associated Press and The Current each reported the existence of a separate security vulnerabilities that expose voters' sensitive personal information, including the last 4 digits of their social security number and their full driver's license number. The Secretary of State's office said it quickly fixed the portal. The flaw found by Parker was different from the 2 previously reported ones. On August 3rd, ProPublica also reported an attempt by outside actors to misuse the portal, including unsuccessful efforts to cancel the registration of 2 prominent Republicans, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. We have updated the process to include an error message letting the individual know their submission is incomplete and will not be processed. Blake Evans, Georgia's elections director, said in a statement from the Secretary of State's office about the flaw discovered by Parker. Incomplete paper and online applications will not be accepted. Parker's cancellation request would have lacked a driver's license number. Yeah, it's still important to look at stuff like this because this is the kind of shadiness, when people talk about voter suppression or they talk about, stealing votes and stuff like that. This is how that kind of stuff actually happens. It's not some guy absentee voting 10 times. It's not ballots getting like physically stolen and stuff like that. This is how it happens through like stuff like this. Georgia has been having problems for the longest time. Shady ass state. Man, I think I'm gonna get out of here because I'm tired. I think I'm gonna go, y'all. How long have I been on? 3 hours. Let me see. I wanted to look at some headlines. Let's look at some headlines right quick before we get out of here. AP. Plane crashes in Brazil. Sao Paulo. Killing all 61 on board, airline says. A Brazilian airliner says one of its passenger planes with 61 people aboard has crashed into a gated residential community in Brazil's Sao Paulo state Friday, killing all who were aboard. That is sad.
The best things.
Was it one of those little planes? It must have been if it was only 61 people on board. Those little planes scared the crap out of me.
Eu tenho que ser portador de uma notícia muito ruim e que eu queria que todos se colocassem de pé para que a gente fizesse minuto de silêncio, porque acaba de cair um avião na cidade de Vinhedo, São Paulo, com 58 passageiros e 4 tripulantes, e parece que todos morreram. Eu queria pedir minuto de silêncio para as vítimas.
Very sad. What is going on? Was I even sharing that? Oh, damn. Okay. It refreshed the whole screen. It says Donald Trump heads to Montana rally after plane was diverted but landed safely. Former President Donald Trump headed to Montana for a Friday night rally in hopes of ousting the state Democratic senator, but his plane first had to divert to an airport on the other side of the Rocky Mountains because of a mechanical issue, according to Air Force staff. It's kind of scary. Trump's tale of harrowing helicopter ride and emergency landing didn't happen, Willie Brown says. A win for the Harris-Walz ticket would also mean the country's first Native American female governor. What? How does that work? I don't care enough to. Trump campaign projects confidence and looks to young male voters for an edge on Harris. Young male voters. Boxer Imani Khalid wins gold to cap an Olympics marked by scrutiny over her sex. They're going to be forever saying that wrong. Japan's B-girl Amy wins Olympic breaking first gold medal. Last known intact U.S. slave ship is to be broken and should stay underwater, a report recommends. Another one. Near midair collision and safety violation led to fatal crash of Marine Corps Osprey in Australia. No, this one right here is kind of. Do they have an image? How is it intact if this is what it looks like?
How do we speed recovery for our
gave us a much better sense of Clotilda, of the condition of Clotilda, what lives in Clotilda's timbers, and what Clotilda's timbers have undergone in many ways. The artifacts also tell a specific story, and with that, we selected these so that if they were to be put on display, they could speak to certain aspects of the Clotilda story as the vessel itself and how it ties to the story of the people on board. The actual area in which the 110 were held remains archaeologically intact and has integrity, as we would say in the Archaeological and the National Register world. You now can begin to assess a series of options working with the state. These range from the question of raising some or all of it to leaving it in place and memorializing it. It is possible to recover portions of it. To do so would be very difficult and costly.
I'm more inclined to have a memorial. We don't need to spend $30 million to dig up a ship, and it would just take too long for that kind of money to be recovered to directly benefit the community.
At the same time, along with the replica, I think it would be fine to have a memorial at the site as well. That way you can cover all your bases.
Okay. FDA rejects psychedelic MDMA as treatment for PTSD, calling for additional study. Flooding from remnants of Debbie leads to high water rescue in New York, Pennsylvania. Dang, all the way up in New York? A homemade aquarium appeared in Brooklyn tree bed, then came the goldfish ice. Debbie caused trouble all the way up into New York and Pennsylvania. That is a trip. We can make it out of here. I'm gonna go. Peace and love. Thank y'all for listening. Thank y'all.